A wealthy, emotionally distant millionaire, grieving his late wife, stumbles upon a homeless little girl weeping at her grave. But what happens next will turn his life upside down and unravel a series of tragic secrets that not even his wealth could prepare him for. Edward Weston had it all: money, success, and a lavish lifestyle. But all that wealth couldn't heal his broken heart after his beloved wife, Emily, passed away from a sudden illness. Edward was a man who lived behind walls, both physical and emotional. His mansion was colossal, yet empty, reflecting the loneliness that consumed him. Despite his extravagant life, he was lost without her. Every evening, after a long, meaningless day spent attending board meetings and signing business deals, Edward visited Emily's grave. It became a ritual, a sanctuary where he found solace, hoping for some sign that she was still with him, somehow. Her death had stripped him of the only person who ever truly knew him beyond the millionaire facade. Emily had been his anchor, his reason for feeling human in the midst of all the wealth that often felt like a prison. One overcast autumn evening, with the air heavy and the sky weeping, Edward approached his wife's grave like he always did, expecting nothing but the usual silence. But tonight was different. As he neared Emily's tombstone, he noticed a small figure curled up beside it. A little girl, drenched from the rain, was sobbing uncontrollably. She couldn't have been older than 6 or 7, her tiny frame shaking from the cold. She looked utterly out of place, ragged and unkempt amidst the serenity of the cemetery. Edward's initial instinct was to ignore her. He wasn't used to dealing with strangers, let alone children. His life had been built on control, on keeping people at arm's length. But something in the way the girl clung to the gravestone, her cries echoing in the stillness of the evening, pulled at his heart, a heart he believed had hardened beyond repair after Emily's death. He approached her cautiously, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "Are you lost, little one?" The girl looked up, her wide, tear-filled eyes meeting his. I miss her," she choked out. Edward's breath hitched in his throat. The girl's sorrow mirrored his own. But who was she? And why was she here, at Emily's grave? His curiosity piqued, but he didn't push her to explain. Instead, he removed his coat and draped it over her shivering form, kneeling beside her. "Who do you miss?" he asked gently. The girl sniffled, her voice barely a whisper. "My mommy." Edward felt an odd pang of empathy. He too missed someone, his Emily, his love, his life. He sat beside the girl, not knowing what else to say. Silence settled between them, broken only by the occasional sobs of the child and the soft patter of rain. "What's your name?" Edward asked after a long pause. "Amelia," she said quietly. "Where is your mother, Amelia?" The little girl's eyes filled with fresh tears as she pointed at the gravestone. Edward felt his stomach drop as he realized what she was implying. Her mother, like his wife, was gone. He felt a deep connection to her in that moment, their shared grief like an invisible thread that bound them. But something didn't add up. The name on the gravestone was Emily Weston, his late wife. Not Amelia's mother. Confusion gnawed at him, but he pushed it aside for now. Edward couldn't leave her there, not in the rain, not with the darkness closing in. Against his better judgment, he decided to take her with him. "Amelia, you can't stay here. Come with me. I'll take care of you for tonight." The girl hesitated but eventually nodded, exhausted and freezing. Edward wrapped her up in his coat, and together they walked to his car. The ride to his mansion was silent, but Edward's mind was racing with questions. Who was this girl? Why had she been at Emily's grave? He didn't know why, but he felt responsible for her now. Back at the mansion, Amelia remained quiet. Edward offered her food and a warm bed, but the mystery of her presence at his wife's grave continued to gnaw at him. His heart was heavy, conflicted by the emotions stirring within him. The last thing he expected in his life was to be caring for a lost child, but here he was. The following morning, he decided to look into the situation more deeply. He hired a private investigator to find out who Amelia was, where she had come from, and why she was connected to Emily's grave. Days passed, and during that time, Edward and Amelia grew closer. She was quiet and withdrawn, but there was a sense of comfort between them. Her innocence reminded him of the simple joys he had forgotten, buried under layers of wealth and status. One evening, while Amelia was playing in the mansion's garden, the investigator called Edward with the findings. What he heard made his blood run cold. "Edward, you need to sit down for this," the investigator began. It turned out that Amelia wasn't just a random orphan. She was, in fact, connected to Emily, deeply connected. Amelia's mother, who had passed away a few months prior, had been Emily's childhood best friend. Emily had been taking care of Amelia in secret, knowing her friend was terminally ill but didn't want to burden Edward with it. And then came the shocking revelation: Amelia was Emily's daughter. The investigator confirmed it through documents that showed Emily had adopted Amelia before she passed away, but she had never told Edward. Edward was stunned. His heart raced with a mix of emotions: shock, anger, confusion, and an overwhelming sadness. Emily had kept this massive secret from him. Why hadn't she told him about Amelia? Why had she kept this hidden part of her life away from him, even as they shared their most intimate moments? Edward felt betrayed. He couldn't help but replay his last days with Emily in his mind. Were there signs he had missed? Had he been too consumed by his business dealings and wealth to notice something so important? The weight of guilt began to settle in, crushing him under its immense pressure. He had prided himself on being a loving husband, yet his wife had hidden her own child from him. He stormed into his study, pouring himself a glass of whiskey as the enormity of the situation settled in. How could he face Amelia now, knowing the truth? He didn't even know how to feel, whether to be angry at Emily for hiding this, or at himself for being blind to her struggles. But in the midst of his turmoil, a deep sense of responsibility grew. Amelia was Emily's child, and now, she was his responsibility too. Over the following weeks, Edward struggled with his emotions. He kept the truth about Emily from Amelia, knowing that the young girl had already suffered too much. But something within him had shifted. He no longer saw Amelia as just a lost child. She was the last connection he had to Emily, the woman he loved. Slowly, Edward began to open up to Amelia, sharing stories about her mother, about the woman Emily had been. In return, Amelia started to trust him, her once guarded heart softening in the presence of his kindness. The mansion, once cold and lifeless, began to feel warm again, filled with the laughter and life of a child. But beneath this newfound bond, Edward couldn't shake the nagging question: why had Emily kept Amelia a secret? There was still a piece of the puzzle missing, and he was determined to find it. The answer came one evening when Edward found an old letter hidden in Emily's belongings. It was addressed to him but had never been delivered. With trembling hands, he opened it. In the letter, Emily explained everything. She had been diagnosed with a terminal illness and knew her time was limited. She had adopted Amelia, the daughter of her dying best friend, but didn't tell Edward because she didn't want to burden him with the knowledge of her illness or the responsibility of raising a child. She believed Edward had already sacrificed so much for her and wanted him to be free once she was gone. Emily had planned to tell him the truth before she died but had run out of time. She ended the letter with a plea for him to love Amelia as his own, as she had grown to love her. Tears streamed down Edward's face as he read the final words. The anger and resentment he had been holding on to melted away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of love and grief. Emily hadn't hidden the truth out of malice, she had done it out of love, to protect him. Edward knew what he had to do. He walked into Amelia's room, where the young girl sat quietly, playing with a doll. "Amelia," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "There's something I need to tell you." He sat beside her and took her tiny hand in his. "Your mother, she loved you very much. And so did mine. She's gone, but I want you to know that from now on, I'll take care of you. You're not alone anymore." Amelia looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes, and in that moment, Edward felt something shift within him. For the first time in years, his heart felt full again. He had found a new purpose, a new reason to keep going. As he held Amelia close, he knew that he had finally come to terms with Emily's death. He had lost a wife, but in return, he had gained a daughter, a part of Emily that would live on in his heart forever. Edward Weston, the once reclusive millionaire, had learned that love wasn't just about the people we lose, it was about the ones we find in the most unexpected places. Amelia had come into his life as a stranger, but she had brought him back from the brink of despair, reminding him that even in the darkest moments, there was still hope, still love to be found. In the end, Edward realized that the true measure of wealth wasn't in money or possessions, but in the love we give and receive. And with Amelia by his side, he knew that he was the richest man in the world. The end.